So with that, let's jump into the webinar and we'll start with a quick intro for my amazing co-host, Jim Armstrong. Jim is an internationally known trainer and coach for flooring dealers and the founder and president of Flooring Success Systems, a marketing services and coaching program for dealers. Since 2007, thousands of retailers across the US and Canada have relied on Jim's methods to get more customers, get higher margins, gain an unfair advantage over the box stores, and live the lifestyle they deserve. He's also an avid skydiver. Welcome, Jim. Happy to have you here.
I'm really glad to be here and really been looking forward to this webinar. This is, like you said, is going to be a good one.
It's going to be a good one. For those of you in the audience that's got big dreams, what initially got you into the flooring industry? Was it financial freedom? Was it to provide a better future and lifestyle for your family? Was it to have the time and money to do the things that are meaningful to you, like travel, maybe to volunteer, or simply to spend time with your family? At the same time, do you ever feel like you might be putting in so many hours that you don't have the time to do all of the things that inspired you to get into the business to start? In other words, is your business keeping you from living your dreams? Strong leadership skills are a critical key to ensure that this doesn't happen to you in your business and to instead achieve the life and business that you've always dreamt about. Our guest experts on today's webinar are Scott Humphrey and Darren Harrison. Scott is the CEO of the World Floor Covering Association, and he's a world-class trainer and educator on the art of leadership. Darren is the VP of Sunshine Interiors, a family-run business that gives him the time and freedom to travel, participate in deep-sea fishing tournaments, and really enjoy his life. Not long ago, Darren's leadership skills were put to the test in a life or death story that made national news. He was a passenger aboard a small aircraft when the pilot had an aortic aneurysm. While the other passenger on board helped the pilot, Darren, who had no training as a pilot, took over the controls. I'm excited to say that during today's webinar, we're going to discuss the following topics: what happened to Darren in that moment and how he was able to save the lives of those two other passengers on board. Leadership lessons you can learn from Darren's terrifying adventure in the sky to help you ignite your dreams and really make them a reality. And how the SEAL program is training flooring pros to really take the controls of their own destiny and live the life they've always wanted. So with that, Jim, let's get started.
All right. Well, Darren, Scott, it is great to have you guys here, and thank you so much. And Darren is actually taking time out on a fishing tournament right now. So, Darren, where are you at actually?
Currently off the coast of Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas.
Turn your camera around. Show everyone where you're at. Remember, you got to keep talking.
Okay. So here's the deal, and I'm going to give everybody full disclosure on this. If these guys back here are starting to catch a fish, and I throw the camera down and run off, hopefully the volume cancels itself because we're having a halfway decent day, and we need one more fish to really do well and exceed today. So I apologize in advance if that happens. And if you see me keep looking that direction, that's why.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have when Scott and I actually met a month and a half or 2 months ago to talk about this webinar, and he said, Jim, we got to have Darren on, and he told me your story. And one dealers spend so much of their lives working too many hours, stressed out, burned out. Too many of them do that. And right now, Darren, you're living proof of that you can, when applying the right leadership skills, create a situation where you can live the life that you want. And so we're going to circle back to that in a minute, but I just want everybody who's watching this to realize that this is possible to do with your business. You can have a business that serves you and funds and facilitates that ideal lifestyle. So,
well, Jim, I think one thing I'd say right out of the gate is you have to also take the opportunity to take advantage of that. I know a lot of dealers that get stuck in the rut of the opportunities there, but they have the fear of not letting go and being able to enjoy themselves. So some people need that encouragement of, listen, you have to take the time for yourself. If you do not take the time for yourself, it's going to pass you by. I've seen so many people, I'm 41 years old, but I've still seen people around me that have worked their entire lives and they retire to only find out that they've got terminal cancer and they die a year later. You have to take the time when it's in front of you, take advantage of it, enjoy it. That's why you work hard. You have to be that person that says, I'm able to do this because I can and I want to, and take the initiative to do it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So Darren, let's start with, the terrifying adventure that you had in the sky. Can you walk us through what exactly happened?
Oh, the little plane ride that I had a couple of years ago? Yeah,
The little plane ride.
no big deal, So ironically enough, it was 2 years ago, 2 years and a week ago tomorrow. The reason I was in the Bahamas was because of this event that I'm currently sitting in now. I was actually here pre-fishing for the tournament that I'm currently sitting in. And I had to go back, incidentally enough, because I had to go to work to get back to the office. So my good friend that owns the plane and everything said, hey, why don't you come over and pre-fish a couple days? We'll get you back to the office when you need to go. Not a problem at all. So he had a guy come over in the plane and fly over and pick me up. And that's when we started the journey back to Florida. And Russ that came to get me had brought his best friend with him that would casually be like, hey, Scott, do you want to go to Jacksonville and pick up, Jim with us? He's flying in. We just need to go pick him up and come back. Not a big deal. We can have some windshield time, talk and hang out, maybe grab some lunch. Sure, not a problem. So that's the reason Russ was tagging along, which was Ken, the pilot's friend, when they showed up to pick me up. And when we were leaving Marsh Harbor, Russ, Ken's friend, incidentally made the comment as we were walking out on the tarmac. I said, hey, man, what are you doing here? He goes, well, Ken said I'd get some free lunch out of it, and he hadn't killed me yet, so I do this quite often, so here I am. And I just kind of shook it off at no big deal, but later down the road, a couple months later, I finally called him, and I said, hey, bud, remember that comment you made about he hadn't killed you yet? He tried, but he didn't succeed. So that's how the journey began when I was over here and needed to get back, to go to work and try and keep running the office. So
Yeah. So we got, I was looking at a comment here for Scott Perrin, who I was telling you about before we started. He said, Darren, I told Jim that I had heard your story prior, but not that you were a fellow floor guy. As a pilot since 1990, your composure and ability to follow instructions to land that aircraft is truly awesome. Well done, young man, a flooring hero. So,
right.
So,
yeah. So once we had left Marsh Harbor, and Kennedy even made the comment, he's like, man, I wish I knew where the boys were fishing at today. We'd go buzz the boat while we're leaving. And I was thinking to myself, man, I just want to get back. I don't like to do low passes and stuff like that. So he took us out and we climbed up to, around 10,000 feet. And as we got settled there, we had dropped down a little bit as we were coming across the coast towards Florida. And I said, what happened there? And he just made the comment, because I always wear headsets, and he made the comment, air traffic had some stuff going on and they needed us to drop below so we could clear the air for them. I said, all right, no problem. So we leveled off at like 9,500. And then I saw him make a little move with his head, and he kind of made a comment over the radio. He said, guys, I gotta tell you, I don't feel good. And I immediately my mind went to a different place in that exact moment. And I sat up straight in my seat. I had just sent my wife a picture of the airplane, how pretty of a day it was. And I said, Ken, what's wrong? And he said, man, my head hurts. I feel fuzzy. Something's off. I don't feel right. I said, well, what? And at that point, I became pretty stern. And I said, what do we need to do? And at that point, he had already slumped over and he was out. And that was it. 9,500 feet. He didn't slump over the controls. He just kind of laid his head to the side. But what he did when he did that was he there's a aux1 and an aux2 button on the airplane. And then when he passed out, he had flipped the aux2 button, which is incidentally right next to the aux1 button. So what's really key in that is, had he flipped both of those buttons down, it would have killed all communications in the airplane completely. Nothing would have been available, nothing at all. No radio controls, no talking to anybody, no navigational controls. Everything would have been completely out. And those buttons literally are about that far apart. So for him to miraculously only flip off one of the two is one miracle within about, I've told Scott quite often, tons that you can't even keep track of in the entire story. So when he passed out, he flicked off aux2, which incidentally flicked off the autopilot, and it actually started to turn the plane, because natural rotation of a propeller is it started to turn the airplane into a dive, and we started descending very quickly at a rate in which the airplane should have not survived in. So in that moment, I realized I've got to do something or we're going to die. So I crawled to the front of the airplane. His friend is sitting in the right-hand seat, which is basically the co-pilot seat. He's basically trying to get the attention of his friend that is now passed out. I'm crawling to the front, shaking him, saying his name. Nothing's happening. So I immediately go to, I've got to react to what's going on, or we're going to continue to descend and go into the ocean, of which I can see out the right windshield, because we're at a bank turn basically like this now. And I can look out the window and see that the waves are coming so fast. And I just know I've got to do something. So in that moment, I reached over the top of Ken, the pilot, and began to not pull up, but turn the yoke to the side to where it leveled the airplane off, to where we could then maintain a steady altitude before I then pull up the airplane. So all that transpired within less than a minute. We dropped, I think, 3,000. Scott's probably looking at the data right now on his end. I think it was like 3,000, 3,500 feet in less than a minute. We were 100 knots past max on the airplane, which means the airplane should not have survived. The wings should have came off the airplane. It should have fell apart. It didn't. We were able to regain control at that point. I say we, because after I leveled the airplane back off, Russ, Ken's friend, had to help maintain altitude of the airplane while I had to do the things I had to do to be able to then sit in the pilot seat and be able to actually fly the airplane and continue on to Florida the way we were flying.
Crazy. Can't believe that actually happened. You made it into People magazine, didn't you, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah,
Quite
they
the
actually
celebrity.
reached out. Yeah, I did People magazine. Yeah, they did a spliff on me, so that turned out pretty cool.
So Darren, how did were you on the radio with the control tower? How did they get you on the ground?
So when everything took place, I did not, I'm guessing at this, again, data will prove me wrong. I think we were flying for 10 minutes or so before I was actually able to communicate with somebody, maybe even a little longer than that. I actually, when I was able to get in the pilot seat, I put the headset on and I tried to radio the tower, and it wasn't working correctly. So I went to double check the wires on my headset, and as I pulled to the end of it, there was nothing but frayed wires on the end, because when I had moved Ken out of the seat, I had actually pulled the headset out of the dash, and I wasn't able to reuse the plug. So yeah, Jim, I had the same reaction you do there. I basically looked at everything and I said, man, I'm screwed here. And then I looked over at Russ, sitting in the co-pilot seat, and I said, hey, Russ, hey, do this, I'm going to need that headset, man. And he's like, not a problem at all. He gave me his. I was able to put that on, plug it in the hole, or, I was able to pull the plug out, even though it was bare wires, plug his in. Then I was able to try and communicate at that point with a tower. And after a couple times of trying to reach him, Russ taps me on the shoulder and he says, hey, bud, you're hitting the wrong button on the yoke. I said, I don't have any idea what I'm doing. He goes, it's the button on the back. I was like, all right, cool. So I wound up hitting the button on the back of instead of the top, I hit it on the back. And that's when I was able to actually communicate with somebody on the other end of the radio and say, hey, everybody's heard the transmission 100 times if you've heard my story. It's what they have recorded. Hey, my pilot's gone incoherent. I've got a serious situation here. I need some help. And then that's when I was able to communicate. And what you guys need and what everybody needs to realize is the communication on air traffic only goes so far. It's kind of like a CB radio. It'll only go a certain distance and then it cuts off. So Ken, my pilot, was already talking to Fort Pierce, which was the airport we were scheduled to go to clear customs before we carried on to Lake Wales. And when all this happened, we actually started flying southbound, unbeknownst to me, because we had lost all electronics. And we were flying more towards West Palm Beach. So by rule of thumb, and again, data might prove me wrong, but I should not have been able to communicate with Fort Pierce Tower. So the whole dynamics of being able to communicate with who I was talking to at that point was kind of crazy. The crazier part is when you're sitting in West Palm, from what I understand, you shouldn't be able to talk on the Fort Pierce channel. So for Robert, the air traffic controller, to be able to talk to me where he was at is another miracle within itself, which Scott Humphrey and I have talked about many times. That's another one of the many that you can't count. To be able to even actually communicate with somebody, Jim, when you're trying to communicate with the tower, I will tell you, once I did land, and we'll get back to the story here in a minute. Once I did land, they carried me into the air traffic control room, because that's actually been one thing of mine since I was a little kid. I've never been up in a air traffic control tower. I've always thought they're fascinating. I was like, man, I wonder what it looks like on the inside of those things. So they asked me when I landed, hey, is there something you want to do? I said, yeah, I want to meet the guy on the other end of the line, and I want to see the inside of an air traffic control tower. So at that point, I went in there, and he had a handheld, I shouldn't say handheld, it wasn't handheld. It was more of a base station type radio that they had dug out of a closet and plugged into a plug, and they actually stacked it on top of his equipment on his desk, because the equipment he had on his desk wouldn't work because we were talking on that Fort Pierce channel. So that's how I was able to communicate with the tower and talk to Robert and say, I need help. Can you help walk me through this? Robert, the air traffic control tower, was actually on break at the time, and they had to run outside and get him and say, hey, man, I know you're not really supposed to be working right now. You're a guy who trains pilots. I think you're familiar with this airplane. Can you come talk to this guy? He needs help. So he ran back in and actually is the one who helped talk me down, even though he wasn't even supposed to be there. Another miracle that Scott Humphrey and I have talked about. He wasn't even supposed to be working that day. So that's just another one of the miracles that took place. And then once I was able to establish communications with him, he's the one who proceeded to talk me through, hey, this is what we need to do. This is where you need to go. This is what you need to look at. Stay calm and continue on. Let's fly northbound and try and find West Palm Beach at Palm Beach International and get you down on a really good runway. So that's how the communication took place once I started to head towards the coast after a few minutes.
So when he was talking you down, I mean, I've gone up and I've been in planes so many, because like Reed said, I skydive, and coming in for a landing, like, that's probably the most dangerous part. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I would say so. It wasn't the easiest. So, once we were flying towards the coast, I've established radio communication. He knows what I have going on. Lots of things happen behind the scenes as far as, I don't know, a lot of people can look it up, but there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes government wise to, realize that I was a true plane in emergency. I really needed help. I wasn't, a terrorist or anything like that. And to be fortunate enough to be able to have somebody to help talk me down was a miracle within itself. But I will tell you, as we started flying towards the coast, in that moment, I realized that second when I saw the coast and I was flying towards the coast, and I reality set in, and I said, at some point, I'm going to have to put this thing on the ground, and I've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like if you don't figure it out, it could be bad. So at that time, they told me to start northbound, and we started heading towards to approach that landing. Again, you can look at the data and you can see at that point I started actually practicing control and altitude on the airplane, because coming in for a landing, obviously you have to have controlled altitude. And I wanted to be able to say, you know, if I need to pull up a couple 100 feet or 500 feet, I can do what I need to do. And that's where I started to actually work the airplane and try and figure out how to raise and lower the altitude as I headed northbound when Robert was trying to talk me in for a landing. So that was interesting that Robert, in coming into land, had actually printed out two pieces of paper that he had side by side in front of him. There's only two options. Again, somebody's probably going to critique me on this. Two options for the layout of the controls of that caravan during that time. And he was asking me questions to analyze which actual control system I had in that airplane, so he could tell me exactly what knob to pull, exactly what to do as I was approaching a landing. So he did, I mean, the job he did, obviously, hats off to him. As I came in to land at Palm Beach, he was talking me through every step of the way. And again, you'll be able to see data. I actually flew past the airport and went out and made a big swoop and came back, because when I came towards the airport, I knew I was too steep. I was too high to land. So I actually passed the airport and did a full turn and came back for the approach on the landing. And as I came closer to the runway, Robert kept talking me through it. You know, the ground's going to look bigger. The objects are going to look bigger. The numbers on the runway are going to get bigger. And, you know, there's many variables that took place as far as the flaps go. He was trying to get me to slow down and things of that nature. That didn't work out, obviously. Everybody's heard and seen that. But I was able to land going way too fast from what they tell me. But it helped with the smooth landing and helped me control things I needed to control, having a 10,000-foot runway to be able to put it on the ground safely that day.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Just, you know, from just my experience of coming in for landings under a parachute, that landing is the scariest part. You're coming in, and I can tell when you're talking about the buildings getting bigger, the numbers getting bigger, you're on a clock. You have to land this thing. It's not, eventually you're going to run out of fuel. And if you're not experienced at this, nothing looks correct when you're coming in from a height like this and then coming in. It's a weird point of view that you never, in normal situations, you're not going to see unless you're sitting in the cockpit of a plane regularly. It's something you're not going to see much as a passenger, like on a 747 or something. So that you were able to come in one shot and land it smoothly is amazing.
Yeah, Jim, and I'll also say, you know, inclusive of that is, I told myself from the get-go, I'm only doing this once. I'm not going to do it twice. I'm not going to be the guy that flies by, comes back around, and tries again. I told myself, I got one shot at this, and that's it. So thank God I stuck it on the first one.
Yeah, exactly. So how did your experience in leadership help you in this situation?
You know, when things started to go what I call south in the cockpit, there was a lot going wrong in a short amount of time, obviously, very short amount of time. You have to take the initiative to stay calm, control the situation, and do what you can to try and make things go right. Did I know what I was doing? No. Do we all know what we're doing in business when something goes wrong? No. Do we all know what's going wrong around our family when we need to figure something out? No. Then the whole key is stay calm, take the initiative to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, talk through it. Have some help. Ask your partner, whether it's your wife, a guy sitting in the co-pilot seat, your business partner. Ask the questions. Say, I need help. Get the help you need from them. Work as a team to get it done and figure it out.
Yeah, and that ties really nicely into something that I wanted to ask, like with regards to, you know, all of our amazing audience and dealers that are out there. Are there any business lessons that you can kind of share with us based on your experience?
As far as business lessons go, Reed, I'm in business with my brother and my dad. I wouldn't be sitting where I am in any means without those two guys. They are the best thing ever. We work well together. We're a great team. We have done many ventures that we've tried at and failed. Um, you know, I would the what we always say now between the three of us, me and my dad and my brother, is stay in your lane, do what you're good at, and know what you're doing. Kind of some slang Polk County terms there. The same thing goes for the situation that I was in. Control what you can. Don't try and do something that's out of the realm of possibilities that's really going to mess things up. Make sure you stay where you know you're comfortable and stick with it. Don't branch out too far. I had a couple people ask me, did the thought ever cross your mind to, get over the ocean and jump out the back and what the plane duo was going to do and try and survive the jump out of the airplane? No, that never crossed my mind. Every people have asked me, why didn't you just crash land on the beach? And it's like, you got to take the information that you're given and apply it to the situation you're in to be able to succeed. And whether that's landing in an airplane or in your business and anything you do in life, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And just some of those things aren't even options. Like that's not even the way that you think about it. It's like you got to survive. You had a pilot, you had another passenger on board. Some of those options that your peers and friends had, suggested doesn't cross your mind, not even an option for you. And so, Scott, question for you. What are your thoughts on the role that leadership played in Darren's situation? And what are some lessons that our audience can take away from his experience?
Yeah, so pretty amazing. I wrote down some notes because Darren has told this story so many times. He leaves out some small details because it would last. I mean, it's an experience he lived over minutes that in his mind lasts for hours because he's relived it. He recently had the chance to fly with that pilot again. Unlike most people in that scenario, that pilot actually survived, and that in itself is another miracle. There was a miracle that's not the plane Darren was supposed to be on. And had they been on the other plane, it would not have withstood the G-forces coming at it when they turned in. Another miracle to me was when Darren came up, he didn't jerk the throttle back, which would have been my reaction because you're diving, would be to jerk it back. Had he done that, the wings would have come off the plane because he had moved too quickly. And many of us would get in that defensive mode and we just ultimately react totally opposite of what we were doing. So here's four things that came to my mind as Darren retold that story. Man, I'm sitting here listening to it and sweating just like I heard it for the first time. And for me, Darren called me or left me a message a week after that happened. I had read this report in the news, it had been all over the national news. And I'm sitting at a Vistage meeting with a bunch of CEOs and I get a text that says, hey, you don't know me, but if you get a chance, I'd like to tell you my story. Well, when he said my story, I knew he had listened to Leadership Live because that's something I talk about a lot. What's your story? How are you creating your story? And I said, sure, I'm in a meeting. Tell me a little bit about your story. He said, well, I want to tell you how I landed the plane. And I remember this stunned feeling coming over me and I went, are you the guy that landed the plane when the pilot was incapacitated? And he said, yes, that's me. And so think about what Darren just shared with you. And here are four things from a leadership standpoint that you can learn from that scenario. First of all, live your dream. I was at a seminar one time and the speaker said, how many of you are living your dream? And maybe about a third of the people raised their hand and said, we're living our dream. And he looked at us and he said, so for the rest of you, whose dream are you living? And some people won't live their dream because they let fear hold them back. Here's Darren. He doesn't let life control him. He controls life. And so he doesn't mind creating the balance in his life. There's a lot of people who wouldn't do what Darren's doing right now because they won't get on a small plane. There's a lot of people who wouldn't jump out of a plane, Jim, a whole lot of people that wouldn't jump out of a plane, but you don't let fear hold you back. The second thing I thought from Darren's story is you want to determine the required outcome. I remember talking to Darren about this and I asked him a few questions and I said, why didn't you panic? He said, because I told God I wasn't dying that day. This is not my day. So he determined in his mind he was going to land that plane and he was going to land it safely. If there was an injury, that might come with it, but he was not dying that day. And part of the reason for that was his wife was pregnant with his first child. And so he had determined in his mind he would not let anything happen to him that day. The third thing is don't be afraid to ask for help. If Darren had got up there and put those headphones on and acted like he knew what he was doing or fought back against the person who had more knowledge than him, this would have been a totally different outcome. But he acknowledged there are some things I don't know, and it's okay not to know them. It's okay for you as a leader to rely on the expert that actually has the knowledge and the information. And that's the fourth thing, rely on the experts. All of us have somebody that we can tap into, whether it's a book we read or a seminar we attend or a podcast that we listen to. There are experts out there who have been somewhere you haven't been. It's okay. Just because you're a leader doesn't mean you have to know it all. It means you have to know where to find it. And you've got to have people you can rely on.
So what you just said reminds me of something. There's a book called Who, Not How by Dan Sullivan. And it says it all in the title. You don't have to know how to do everything. You just need to have the humility to reach out to others that do. And that's exactly what Darren did in that situation. Who Not How is a great book, by the way. It ties into exactly what you were saying, Scotty.
And Jim, what you see a lot of times is leaders who are in that position, who are leaders by title, or they're leaders simply because their last name's the same as the founder. They're insecure asking for help. They feel like they have to pretend that they know it all. They feel like they have to be the smartest one in the room. But the reality is the best leaders don't have to be the smartest one in the room, but they have to have the loyalty of the people that are smarter than them. So they surround themselves with people that they're not intimidated by their wisdom. They tap into it.
Yeah, when you were saying a second ago that Darren didn't start arguing with ground control, I mean, I burst out laughing. It's because in that situation, it'd be ludicrous. You don't know what you're doing. Well, the same thing is true with your business. You can't know everything about running a business. And when you ask for help, when you get, because as a coach, I face this with dealers, you know, it's a little bit like, you know, I've called ground control for help and I'm telling you what controls to push and what, and you're like, well, why are you arguing with me? You reached out for a reason. And that's where I think the humility comes in.
Yeah.
Darren, you told us that you love going to work and that you love your business. We were talking to you before the webinar and you're living your dream. And every day you say, I get to get up and live my dream. What role has leadership played in enabling you not to be an overworked, stressed out dealer like so many of them are, and instead have that fun, fulfilling life and be on this fishing tournament right now?
You know, I've said it many a times before, and I've tried to encourage people, listen, if you don't like what you're doing, change it. There's no reason to live in a rut to where it's going to reflect on your family life. It's going to reflect on you personally. It's going to reflect on you business wise. You know, whether you realize it or not, if you're not doing what you enjoy, people know it. They can read it on your face. And I'm a firm believer in, if you don't enjoy what you do, change it. And I get up every day. I go to work. My dad's there 90% of the time before I get there, and he's gone 90% when I leave. And it's one of the highlights of my day to be able to sit there and see my dad in the mornings and be able to work side by side with him. And, you know, to have my brother there as well, and to be able to have a team like the three of us to succeed. People dream of that, and I don't take it for granted. You know, I do business with friends. I have friends that do business with me. If they're not a friend and they're a business associate, I can tell you it's not long before they are a friend, because that's the kind of mentality I have. I do business with people that are friendly to me, and they do it in return. So when I say I don't dread going to work and I don't go to work, because I enjoy what I do and I love it so much that it's not really considered work. And I've kind of learned that from my dad. And that's why I take the time that I do to go enjoy myself and do the things like I'm doing now, is because we work hard. I know a lot of people may look at me and go, man, you don't really work that hard. And it's like, well, you don't realize I sent a work order back to the office yesterday from the boat to the installers to do a job today that needed to be done. I'm still working even though I'm here, but yet I'm still having fun while I do it. So to have the freedom that we have now with technology the way it is, and to be able to go and do things and still be able to be a part of the office when you're not physically at the office is another key to be able to do what you love to do. I'm not saying go on vacation and work the whole time you're there. That's not what you need to do at all. Just do it in small increments. You know, if you're going and doing something you enjoy, take 10 minutes out of your day to disconnect and say, hey, listen, family, I've got to go work for 10 minutes to do some things. I'll be right back. But continue enjoying what you do. Don't allow your business to run you while you're on a trip or in trying to enjoy your vacation. Because if you're still attached to technology while you're on a trip and doing the things you do, it's not really taking time off. And I can tell you, everybody on here, I have failed in doing that, and I need to do better at that. But it's part of the process that you got to learn as a leader to be able to do that. So yes, enjoying what you do while you do it, being a leader, taking the time to enjoy being a leader by stepping away is something you have to do.
Yeah, it sounds like you found a really good, work-life balance. And what's also great is when you step away, that allows somebody else to come and take on more of a leadership role in your absence. And those people are able to fill your shoes and obviously ensure that, everything is running smoothly. But when leaders step aside, it allows for other leaders to grow as well. And so I think that's something that we can all really take away from that and helping kind of nurture that within our own businesses. But Scott, if a dealer wants to build a business that enables them to kind of like live their dream and to build the kind of legacy that Darren and his family has been able to do, what role does, strong leadership play in being able to do this?
Well, the challenge for most people that consider themselves leaders is they try to lead on issues. They try to handle a specific issue that they think is holding them back, when the reality is, if you invest in the leader who deals with those issues, you handle multiple things at one time. At the WFCA, we had this challenge that we began to look at different issues that were impacting the industry. And we realized that even if we solved those issues, we really hadn't solved everything we could. But when we began to invest in leaders and helping them be better leaders, then you begin to raise the tide for everybody. You change the entire industry. And that's where our focus is today. Thanks to Dean Howell, who was our past chairman, and Sam O'Krent, who's our chairman now. We have a passion for developing leaders within the flooring industry, and even outside of that, extending our reach so that we can partner together with others who feel the same pains and have the same heartbeat that we do. Leadership is the key, and there are seminars all over the country today talking about leadership. But the reality is, most of us know more about the seminars that are taking place or the books that are out there than the ones that are actually acting on the knowledge that's available to them.
So, Scott, why do you think it's important for dealers to be intentional about developing their leadership skills? I mean, they may think, well, I own the business, therefore I'm a leader. Why is that perhaps not enough?
I think a lot of it's the fear of failure. The reality that they got it there, so they've got to keep it there. And unfortunately, that's nothing but a holdback. I think what Reed just said about giving people the opportunity to serve. You've heard the old scenario about having the right people on the bus and then the right people in the right seats on the bus. But the first step is simply to get the right people on the bus. You've got to have people there that you trust so that you can do what Darren does. Darren would not be able to step away with peace of mind and relax and enjoy himself if he had to turn something over to someone who thought was not qualified to do it. And so part of leadership is not only investing in yourself so you can help them be better, but also investing in your people. You've got to let them have opportunities to grow. I struggle with this, and I think this is what Reed was referring to too. Delegation is difficult for a lot of leaders because we feel like we're putting off on someone else what we really don't want to do. And even though you view it that way, delegation is their opportunity to prove what they're capable of. So you've got to delegate. Too many people feel like if it's not done by them, it's not done right. So they don't run their job. Their job runs them.
Yeah, and there's just like not enough time in the day to do everything yourself. And I definitely think that that's something that I struggle with as well as the delegation. But at some point, your role changes. You want to give people opportunities to shine as well. And it really helps you grow in your own career, but also all of those that you're, working alongside and mentoring as well. So,
It does. And Reed, it also extends your career because the fact that Darren gets to work and play means he's probably going to work longer because he understands the balance now. A lot of people have to retire before they enjoy their life, but Darren's enjoying his life and working at the same time. And so, he'll probably stay involved to some degree in the flooring industry for longer than most people will because he loves what he does. And he loves what he does because it's not all he does.
Hmm.
I would agree with Scott on that and saying I've watched my dad throughout the years. I started in my business with my dad 22 years ago, 23 years ago. And he is an individual that loves what he does to the extent of he is now 73 years old. He will tell you that he doesn't know how to spell retirement. He doesn't want to know how to spell it. He loves what he does. He goes to work because he enjoys it. I'm in the same mentality. I go to work because I enjoy it. I'm not looking to retire. I don't even have a date in my mind that I would retire because I enjoy what I do so much. But the flip side to that is I also enjoy myself in the business as much as I do not being at the business. So if that makes sense, again, going back to Jim, if you're doing what you enjoy, it's not really work. So why would you even look at retiring? And as I joined the WFCA board recently, and we just finished our last board meeting, you're surrounded with people that you enjoy hanging around. And again, it's not like being at work. You're not actually having a job of doing something because you're taking pride in something that you enjoy so much. Then it's not really work. It's something that you enjoy doing. So do it. Find something like that to be a part of and be a part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's so important as well as a leader to create and foster that kind of culture. And those are kinds of, opportunities and cultures that people seek. And so being able to, create something like that where it is enjoyable and you're not burdened every day to go to work, I think that's kind of something that we are absolutely all striving for. And while I'm quite jealous that you are on a boat in the middle of the ocean somewhere while I'm in my office, I feel like here at Roomvo, we also foster that kind of culture and relationship among one another, and we're able to kind of do the same as well. And so, Scott, with regards to leadership in the industry, of course, there's a ton of opportunity to build on our own leadership skills, but also identify those in the industry and within our own teams that, we see that kind of future for. And so through the WFCA, you guys have the SEAL program. And so what motivated you to launch this for our industry?
Yeah, part of it, Reed, was frustration because we had taken on multiple issues. I had helped create multiple organizations that were to break down the silos and help to solve issues. And I began to realize that solving the issue doesn't solve the problem. The problem ultimately in the industry and in any industry is leadership. When you have strong leaders, they find ways to solve the issues that are holding people back. I'll also say that selfishly, this is what I want my legacy to be. I love investing in people. I love investing in leaders. I love pouring into them and not only changing the way they work, but I want to change the way they live. I've said for years that if you invest in making someone better at work, they might take it home. But if you invest on making them a better leader in life, they'll always take it to work. And so the challenge for us was to create a program or partner with someone who could create a program that would allow people who live in a hectic, fast-paced life, like Darren, to go through a program. So SEAL stands for Seeking Excellence as Leaders. And it's not flooring specific, it's leadership specific, and it's self-paced, but it is monthly motivated. So every month we give you a kind of a flexible calendar of what you should go through on these video modules. Each video module is about 5 minutes. And then there's probably 3 to 5 minutes of application each day. And ideally, you want to do it in the morning, and you want to use that application and keep it with you all day long as you seek to implement some of the suggestions. But it's self-paced, because if you miss a few days, that's okay. You can go back and catch up. The partner that we have is a group called Lead Every Day. Randy Gravitt, who's a dear friend of mine, grew up with him, who served as life coach for the Buffalo Bills, for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and also has done a lot of training for Chick-fil-A, has now partnered with Mark Miller. And Mark Miller was the lead trainer for Chick-fil-A for over 25 years. And Chick-fil-A has allowed them to use all the research that they did and the training they did for their businesses. And if you know much about Chick-fil-A, they do it right. And so Mark has just written a phenomenal book. I probably have a copy of it here. It's called Uncommon Greatness. And the title says it all. You can be great, but to be uncommonly great, you've got to be willing to do what others are not willing to do. And he cites a lot of research that's in there. He does the first 2 months of this training, and there's short video modules. And then Randy does the last 2, The Secret of Teams and Chess, Not Checkers, the strategic moves that you make in your life. But again, once you are part of the SEAL program, you have access to all that material. Even though the certification lasts 4 months, you have access to it for an entire year. Here's the best part, Reed. It's less than $1 a day. So we're nonprofit. We don't simply do what we do to make money. We need to make enough money to stay afloat. But our goal is to impact as many people as we can. And we wanted to take the cost initiative out of the way. And so for less than $1 a day, $299 for an individual, or $29 a month if you choose to pay it on a monthly basis for a year, or $999, you can put 10 people through from your business, all for $999 for each 10. And we launched it back in April, thinking that we would have about 15, 20 people go through. We had 50 signed up, and we have roughly that many going through right now. And we are starting our next cohort on June 3rd. And we're going to try to limit it to 40, because I'm doing the personal coaching on all these, and it's a little difficult to give it the attention that I need to give it with more people than that. And so I would just encourage people, if you're interested in being a part of a self-paced leadership certification program that literally can change your life, then sign up for SEAL. The next one again is June 3rd, and then we'll start it every other month after that. So the next one after that would be in August. And our hope is to impact as many leaders as we possibly can.
Sounds amazing.
One thing I want to add to that, Reed. If anybody's worried about the cost, stop taking a toll road for a month and let it pay for itself. If you're that self-conscious about cost, give up something else, because I can tell you, once you invest in yourself, your business will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Don't let the cost be the deterrent for what you could gain out of the situation. Also, I would also encourage you to include your management, your sales team, not just yourself. This is not an ownership program. This is not a management program. This is a program for anybody in your organization to enjoy and excel at self-program. And Scott and I have talked about it many times with Sam. It is one of those things, if you invest in your people, they're more likely to stay with you longer, because you invest in them as an individual. You're not investing in them as something that's going to copy your business. This is truly a program that a person is going to benefit from personally, and the business will come later.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, I would just add to that, Reed. I mean, research shows that if you simply invest in your people financially, they'll leave for a bigger check. But if you invest in them in a way that is not financial, it's much more difficult for them to leave. When you invest in an individual by training them to be better, you've made an investment that more pay can't outdo. And so please, as Darren said, this is for emerging leaders. This is for anybody in your organization. In fact, we have one organization right now that has 20 people going through. 20 people, because they believe that developing the next level of leader will take their business to the next level. And we believe that as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's quite a lot of interest in joining SEAL. You mentioned your June 3rd cohort. You're going to limit it to 30 people. Sounds like that's a good problem to have, that there's lots of interest from those in the industry. So very happy to hear that for you and the team. with just a few minutes left, we're going to open up the Q&A for our audience, see if there's any questions that are outstanding. Scott, while those are coming through, can you share with us how you can sign up and get started, whether it be the June cohort or one of the following this summer?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, if you go to our website, wfca.org, you will see the SEAL logo. If you'll just click on that logo, it will take you to the page where you can sign up and you can gather additional information about the people that are running that program for us, what the program is all about, the time commitment, etc. So wfca.org, click on the SEAL logo, and it will take you to the options of signing up, whether you want to do that individually or for your entire business.
Amazing.
I'll add to that, Scott. They can also let them know they signed up for some things. So appreciate that.
Yeah, our chairman put out a challenge called the Chairman's Challenge. And one of the things he did was ask the board to get 10 people to sign up to go through the SEAL certification. So Darren's counting anybody who signs up today as part of his 10. I think that's wise, my friend.
100%. That's right. 100%.
Smart
Yeah,
guy.
Sam.
That's why he's a leader.
Yes.
We have some questions starting to roll through. So Scott, this one's for you. Can you share a little bit more about some of the topics that are covered during the SEAL program?
Yeah, so it covers everything from personal leadership to team leadership. As I said, one of these sections, which is an entire month, is the secret of teams. Uncommon Greatness is really about personal leadership. And it shares all the vast information that Mark Miller was able to receive and utilize when he was with Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A has been very gracious to allow him to, hundreds of thousands of dollars of research, statistics, et cetera, and he is citing those to you. There's a lot of motivation in this, but there's a lot of challenge to it. And you begin to realize, by the way, in order to get certification, it's not enough to simply go through the program. Each day you're required to put in the comments section what you gleaned from that video segment. That is our verification that you've actually participated, and that's the only way you can receive the certification at the end of 4 months.
All right. Darren, a question for you. Having been through what you've went through, continuing to take risks flying on small planes over the ocean, do you have your pilot's license yet? Or is that on the horizon for you?
No, I do not. My wife informed me that I'm not allowed to get my pilot's license, but now that I'm back in the air as much as I am, she might not be opposed to it as much.
Amazing. That makes sense. Ultimate leadership, getting your pilot's license and being able to actually fly yourself one day sounds very cool under better circumstances, of course.
No doubt.
With that wraps up all of the questions that we had in our Q&A for today. And so with 2 minutes to share, Scott, Darren, Jim, thank you so much for joining today on our Roomvo University webinar. I think that this was an incredibly insightful session for our audience, and really being able to, learn from industry veteran like yourself, Scott, and Darren, somebody who's, risen through the ranks at their own business and then, had a crazy experience that they could share and kind of touch on how leadership played a role in that. So I appreciate everyone taking their time to join us this afternoon. As Scott mentioned, you can access the details and sign up for the SEAL program by going on the wfca.org website and clicking on the SEAL logo. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to your Roomvo rep. You should have their emails if you've got any questions about anything that we spoke about or covered today. But with that, thank you all. Thank you to my guests and to Jim. And we will see you at our next Roomvo University webinar.
Thanks, Darren.
Hey, good luck, Darren. Hope you do well in the tournament.
Good luck.
Thanks, Jim. Great talking to you.
Keep
See you
trying.
guys.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.